evening and welcome to For the Record. Tonight we speak with a body that has remained relatively inconspicuous over the years, despite playing a key role in land management in Fiji. That is the Fiji Survey Registration Board. And with us we have the Surveyor General and Registrar Secretary of the Surveyor Registration Board, Mr. Asakaya Tambua. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Well, let's talk about the board first, the Fiji Survey Registration Board. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people in Fiji haven't heard of it. They don't know what it does, what its functions are, what its roles are. Could you explain that to us first?
Thank you very much. Firstly, the board is the body responsible for establishing and maintaining the competency and the educational standard of the registered land survey in Fiji, and also keep records of all registered land surveys, and also impose disciplinary actions where appropriate on complaint received on registered land surveys. So that's actually the role of the boards.
Is this a statutory body? Is it is it within a legislation?
Yes, it's governed under the Surveyors Act Cap 260, and the board is appointed by the Ministers of Land and Mineral Resources. So we have board members that is from the private sector and the government. So they are all members of the boards. That's work towards administers all land registered survey in Fiji. So basically that is the board just look after land registered surveys.
Looking at the number of surveys that we have in the country, given the rough terrain that we have and the land mass, how many surveyors do we have out there actually carrying out these works? Actually,
there are 37 registered land surveys in Fiji that are gazetted and in the list of registered surveys.
So 37 seems like a pretty small number given the considerable size of the area that we have, land mass out there. How come we have such a small amount of surveyors out there?
Actually, we have registered land surveys, and there are staffs that work under registered land surveys, which are called survey technician and achievement. So they will actually do the work under the supervision of these registered land surveys. So actually what the land survey's role is to ensure that all the survey carried out by all these survey technician and achievement are done in accordance to the survey's regulation. Therefore, if you look at the one registered surveyor, he can have like 3 teams under him, which he supervises.
So you have these surveyors who operate under private companies, and also you happen to have those who are working for the government as well. How many do you happen to have in your department?
Actually, for the Department of Lands, we have 5 registered surveyors that working under the Department of Lands. And for government, we have a total of 6. That's 1 with the Ministry of Waterways.
And in what ways does each surveyor fulfill the duty? I mean, as I understand it, we were earlier talking about the surveyors that are with the Itoke Land Trust Board. There are those that operate privately, those that operate under the government. Could you explain that dynamic to me?
Actually, for Itoke Land Trust Board, they have their own panel of surveys, and all are private surveys. For government, it solely deals with state lands. So that's the difference between the 2 entities. For the registered land surveys in the Department of Lands, it's only look after the surveying of state land. And for all Itoke lands, it's come under the panel of surveys under Itoke Land Trust Board.
Now, as I understand, before you carry out any sort of construction work, or if you happen to have any piece of land that you'd like to build something on, whether it's commercial, residential, or any other purposes, you need to have survey work carried out. And this is mandatory, correct?
Yes. Actually, that is the main purpose of the surveys. Actually, go there and demarcate the boundaries of your land parcel. So once that is confirmed, he has to produce a survey plan, which need to be approved. That's where a registered title or list is given to the land owners of that land parcels. And what actually the main objective of surveying is to ensure that whoever builds on that particular land builds within that boundaries. And the approval of a building permits comes under the local governments or Department of Town and County Planning or the city councils or the town council.
Now, I can understand that it's a pretty long process, and we will get into that later on. But just looking at survey works that I carried out, you happen to have a lot of different areas that you need to dip into. It's not just basically going out with the equipment and taking a look at the land, right?
Yes, that's true. Actually, surveyors are not the only one that stand in front of total station doing observation. They actually have to do the survey according to the survey's regulation, collecting all those information from the field. They come back to the office. They actually have to prepare a survey plan. Firstly, they need to prepare a scheme plan. And if you look at the Itoke land, he needs to go through Itoke Land Trust Board. They need to vet that information to see that that information is in accordance to what actually they have provided to the surveyor to do. So once that is cleared from Itoke Land Trust Board, it's sent to Department of Town and County Planning or City Council if it is within the city boundary. And that's when they actually look at the scheme plan. They impose conditions like you need to put a building line restriction 6 meters wide. You need to put access easement, drainage needs to be put on the survey plan. These are the formation of the road, the width of the road. All those things need to be put on the survey plan. So once it's approved by the Department of Town and County Planning, the surveyors then actually prepare a survey plan, which then lodged to Department of Lands. The role of the surveyor generally is actually to see that the survey plan is done in accordance to the survey regulation. Once everything is in order, then it's been approved as to survey.
So suffice it to say that a surveyor, a registered surveyor, must have a thorough knowledge and understanding of all the laws and everything related to land management.
Yes, and actually deal with when you talk about the saving, there are different aspects of saving. Subdivisional saving. So when you talk about subdivisional saving, when you subdivide the land, you need to incorporate what is the Town Country Planning Act. Section states about subdivision, Subdivisional Land Act. You need to incorporate all that into the survey plan. If it's involved a river, you need to impose the River Stream Act. It needs to be applied there. The river, the creek bank reserve need to be shown on the survey plan. So those are some of the legislation that you need to take on board when you're doing planning, subdivision, or any other survey. It's not only confined to the survey's regulations. You need to understand the other aspect, the other surveys that are relevant to that particular work. And if you talk about engineering survey, so that's another act that you need to incorporate into that survey.
We'll be right back after a break. Welcome back. Let's talk about the minimum qualification requirements for any person who wants to become a surveyor.
Thank you. That is the role, the main role of the board. If you look at what the board has set out is in terms of Fiji's context. Right now, we just have a diploma program that is running at the Fiji National University of FNU. Since the diploma in geometry at USP have been stopped because of the low number of students that are attending that course at USP. So now the focus is on FNU. So that was one of the board's outcome, to try and work with Fiji National University for the university to offer that course because of our students graduating from schools. So the prerequisite to become a registered surveyor, you need to have a diploma in land surveying from Fiji National University or a degree from any relevant institution from overseas that recognized by the board, either New Zealand or Australia, for example. And they need to work under a direct supervision of a registered surveyor for 2 years. So they need to have that 2 years field experience or industrial experience. So once they met that requirement, then they can apply to the board, and they need to do 5 projects to become registered. So those 5 projects involve a town survey, country survey, subdivisional design on residential and industrial. You have engineering survey, and you have another aspect of survey, which is triangulation survey. So, and that is assessed by different assessors. So for subdivisional scheme design is sent to Director of Town Country Planning. He or she assessed that the project. Engineering survey is sent to one qualified engineers. And we have different assessors who examine all those projects. Once they pass that, the board, once they pass that, then they appear with the board, to the board to do oral examination. So that's when the board will interview them.
So it's quite a lengthy process
Yeah,
to
I mean, if I
actually.
can summarize that. So
Yeah.
firstly, you get your formal qualification.
Yes.
And then you work for 2 years under a registered surveyor. And then you do those 5 projects in 5 different fields, assessed by 5 different experts. And you're still not done. After that is the, what's the next step?
Appear before the board for oral exam. So the board will pose a lot different type of question. How you design your scheme plan, how you do your town survey, what kind of advice will you give your client if there's an encroachment to a building.
You
So these are
also
some of the
mentioned
points.
in the earlier segment about having to deal with different types of acts, with rivers and streams and all that. So that would require at least a basic knowledge of law. So that would mean having to become a surveyor would mean dipping your fingers into a lot of different pots and multitasking at the same time.
So, I mean, is that one of the reasons why there's such a meticulously designed process for becoming a registered surveyor?
I think that process was there when the Surveyors Act exists, and everyone goes through that process. Even I go through that process. It's not a lengthy process. It just requires, it's really prepare candidates to become a professional surveyor. So
Right.
once you are registered surveyor, you become a professional surveyor.
But not to deter anyone who actually wants to pursue this as a career path. You've had more than 50 graduates in the past years from 2009 up until 2018, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
So, if, for example, someone comes from an overseas country and wants to become a registered surveyor in Fiji, they've worked under their legislation that exists. What's the process?
Okay. Thank you very much. We have, the board have set up, they need to sit for the regs and laws exam. So it's purely, the question is purely on Subdivisional Act and Surveyors Regulation. So they just need to come and sit that exam. Once they pass that, they can become a registered surveyor in Fiji.
Well, that's with the registered surveyors. Let's look at something that comes up every time in any profession, is someone who pretends to be a surveyor, or any other profession, bogus surveyors. We've had instances where people have had whispers of being duped by surveyors. You know, they're paying extra money and they're not getting their plans approved. They're not getting the proper specifications on land where they can build or do construction work.
Thank you. That is really one of the challenges that the board is currently going through. Not only the board, the government also. The department is trying to address that challenges. The main reason is the public is not aware the difference between registered land surveyors and just a survey technician. So what actually happens is when these technicians work under registered surveyor, they acquire that knowledge, that skills, that experience, where they can just go out and do survey. This is when they engage directly with client. So they receive money, they prepare quotation, they prepare contract, they sign contract with the client, they receive the money, they do the work, but the work is not done according to service regulation. The issue is that anyone who engages a surveyor, the end product that they want is a registered title.
So how do you differentiate between someone who is a bogus surveyor and someone who's a registered surveyor?
Bogus surveyors are not registered surveyors.
Is there any proof of identification that someone can ask for?
Yes.
Which would be an ID card or certificate?
Now the board have only issuing a certificate
Right.
confirming that they are registered surveyor with the registration number on the certificate.
Right.
So that is the evidence that the board have for someone who qualifies as a registered
You
surveyor.
have instances where people come up with business cards, and of course here in Fiji, when we see a business card with a logo, name, number and everything, we happen to take it for granted that that is a legitimate business and that person is a qualified professional. So when someone, say for example, someone were to present that to us and say that I am a registered surveyor, how do we verify that?
Thank you. As we speak, the board haven't issued any card to any registered surveyor, but actually different private surveying companies have prepared their own business card, which state if the officer is a survey technician, a chainman or survey assistant, or a registered surveyor. So it's actually done by in a different private company. And for government, they have their own ID card, which state that if they are a registered surveyor or senior surveyor or surveyor general, their position is actually mentioned or highlighted in the business card.
Is there any provisions or maybe something in the pipeline for the Surveyors Registration Board to probably have identification numbers for all registered surveyors, just to be able to sort of verify who they are for the public that wants to know about it? I say, for example, with real estate agents, they happen to have an identification number.
Thank you. That is a good point, and the board is also considering that, taking into account the high number of complaints of bogus surveys that the board is receiving. So we are moving towards that direction, and something that will happen in the future.
Thank you. We'll be right back after another break. Welcome back. So I want to investigate how far the extent of the bogus surveys problem is. You said you received a high number of complaints. What's the exact number? Can you give us a figure? And can you give us any examples of any recent cases that you came across?
Thank you. Actually, the registered complaint that we have on bogus survey, it's not that much. It's around 4 that we have registered, and we have found out that they are not registered survey, because the board's only confined to the can only discipline registered survey.
I see.
So what advice we are giving to the public is either they have to report the matter to police or to FICAC if it involves civil service, civil servant. So that's actually the board's decision, because it's only can discipline or deregister registered land surveyor. For example, bogus surveys now, it's a real concern, because the issue is sometimes they receive a quotation of $40,000 to do a survey, for example, a land parcel. Some of the bogus surveys, they fraud the name of a registered surveyor, pretending that they are registered surveyor, but they are not registered. So they receive the money, they do the subdivision. The thing is, they end up that they cannot produce a survey plan. This is when the clients start to complain, running around, seeking advice, how they can, or how can the board assist, or how can the Surveyor General assist, how can the government assist in that area. So what advice we give them is, we try to solve the issue, to advise them, you need to engage a registered surveyor. That's the only advice we need to tell them. So we need to engage a registered surveyor. Sometimes they go for bogus surveys because they are cheap, and they think that they can just do the work within a month. But in actual fact, the real work of the survey takes quite some time because of the process that it has to go through.
Before we get into the process that goes through, you mentioned that you're only able to take action against those who are registered surveyors. Now, since you have regulations that are in place, of course, you'd have a code of conduct. If you were to reprimand or take action against registered surveyors who have breached that, then what do? Is that just a simple case of deregistering them, or are they taken to court for maybe misdemeanor practices?
One is the board's role is to deregister them, and the other is for the client to officially lodge the complaint to police or FICAC. So those are the two. So those are the advice that we always give them, because the board can only discipline them by deregister them.
And that's the only aspect of
Yes.
yours. So that's where your role stops. Although there are only 4 cases, so the number is low. But what's the significance of the damage attached to that low number? So for example, if you've engaged a bogus surveyor without knowledge that they are a bogus surveyor, and you had everything done, what remedies are available to you?
We actually try to assist them by engaging a registered surveyor, if they are willing to take over that job, that work, and continues from where they left. So those are the advice that we always advise them.
But that would mean that they would have to pay extra for that.
Yes.
I see.
So the money that you invested in your first surveyor is gone down the drain.
Yeah.
If you're successful in your litigation against them, then you might
There
have a
is
chance
of
Yes.
recovering.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's interesting. So
Now let's look at the process. Now we've talked about what happens when you actually engage a surveyor and how to identify a bogus surveyor from a real surveyor. Let's just look at the time frame, because you mentioned something about people getting a little upset about things not working out quickly. Sometimes bogus surveyors may even use the excuse, "Oh, it's in the pipeline, it's working." But the entire process of engaging a surveyor till the end result, what are the steps that it goes through? Of course, they don't just come in, take a look at something, and then issue a scheme or a plan, and then it's approved, correct?
Thank you. when you talk about subdivisional survey, so that's when you require to subdivide the land. So the process there, it's depend on the tenure of the land. So if this is state land or Itoke, if you take, for example, Itoke land, Itoke Land Trust Board gives survey instruction to the surveyors. This is the instruction, this is how you have to do the survey, this is the area, and this is the boundary that you need to survey. We have provided
So the
that quality.
so the landowners would actually give you the pegs, the area from A to
Yes.
B to C to D.
Yeah,
Just
it's
that's it.
Itoke Land Trust Board.
Okay.
So the surveyors goes out, survey that land, they prepare scheme plan, and it's sent to the Itoke Land Trust Board. They vet that scheme plan, and they have their own time frame. For example, if it is a 1 month, then within 1 month they will vet that scheme plan. Once the survey receive that, submit it to Department of Town and County Planning, or to the Super City Council, City Council or Town Council. So they have their own time frame. If, for example, if the time frame is like 1 month again or 2 months, then within that 2 months, then they approve that scheme plan. So once that is approved and in order, then the surveyors actually lodge the survey plan to Lands Department. And we have our own time frame also. For example, if it is a 1 month time frame or 3 months time frame, for that current time frame now, it's 3 months from the date it's lodged. So within that 3 months, we will check the survey plan. If there's any error found on the plan, we'll send back to the surveyor. The surveyor needs to amend that and send it back. Everything in order, then we can approve the survey plan. So once that is approved, then the client can apply for registration of lease or title.
Now, there's a two-pronged question that I've got. First, for someone who is actually going to engage the services of a surveyor with the lengthy process that's involved, how do they have assurance, how do they have proof knowing that, yes, the work is actually being carried out since you have to wait for so long?
Yes, thank you. I've come up with the advice that always advise the surveyors that you need to go out and do the survey, confined in service regulation and other legislation. So once you do the survey, when this process is on the pipeline, you can advise your client by producing a title plan, the information about his boundary. This is your boundary, the length, dimension, and this is the bearing. You need to produce that to the client, so you inform the client that you have done the work on the ground, but you are just waiting for the relevant agency's approval before finally he or she can get the survey plan, approved survey plan.
So that's part one. Part two would be just a rough idea of how long it would take. Maybe 3 months, of course, you said for each process, or 1 month for each. Would totally, an accumulation would come up to about 6-7 months, correct?
Yes, that's.
We'll ask you to hold that thought for now. We'll be right back after a break.
Welcome back. Now we're talking about the time frame that it takes from the beginning till the end result when you engage a surveyor. It would take many, many months. You mentioned it would be about 5 or 6 months at the earliest, and the longest could take probably up to a year, correct?
Yes.
So the easiest way, I suppose, to identify false promises by a bogus surveyor would be if they say, you need work done and I'm going to get it done for you in 2 to 3 months. That's not possible.
Yes, take into account other agencies' time frame. For example, Lands Department's time frame is 3 months. And if you need your survey plan to go out of the queue for that 3 months, you need to be a priority check. But definitely it comes back to the surveyor. If the plan have errors, it will be sent back to the surveyors.
And there's also a few other things that take place. First of all is the groundwork, going out onto the field, carrying out work on the field itself, and then going back to the office, drawing up the schemes, putting up the plans in place, then sending it over to the relevant authorities for vetting and authorization.
Yes, that is a very long process. It's not that long, it's depend on the time frame and the
But it
process.
has to be accurate, because if there's
Yes.
any inconsistencies when it comes to, say, for example, if you were to pick up a project just to have a look at it to see if whether or not it's actually, dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, then you would be able to pick out discrepancies and any sort of problems that may arise from that later on.
Yes.
So let's talk about the governing law, right? It must establish a code of conduct for all surveyors, behavioral guidelines, how they're supposed to act, and standard procedures. So suppose someone comes to you with a complaint saying, look, I've been working with this surveyor, who's a registered surveyor, he's not a bogus surveyor, and I'm not happy, I feel that he's not doing his duty to like the best of his ability, or he's not working with me in the way that I want. So what's your course of action then?
Actually, we have a code of conduct under the surveyor's regulation. That's where the board based the decision from. And what actually we do is we have carried out investigation survey to all registered surveyors. So we pick the survey, we actually go out and actually recheck how the survey is carried out. If all the information on the ground is reflected on the plan, if you see that you have placed the boundary pegs, we have to check if the boundary pegs is actually placed on the ground. Actually, we need to see how those pegs are placed. It's correct. How the survey is carried out is correct. If you found out that it's not in order or not in line with the survey's regulation, you will advise the surveyor and also the surveyor registration board. That's where actually the board will decide on what action it needs to take. If disciplinary action needs to be taken, the board will impose that.
So there are enough checks and balances in place?
Yes.
Speaking of checks and balances, everything all comes down to what's coming out of the pocket, since there's quite a large amount of money that needs to be paid upfront. You do also regulate the fees for survey work that's carried out, correct?
Yes, we have a schedule of fees that guide the surveyors how to calculate the fees or apply fees to every survey that they do to every client. So that's the guideline that the surveyors need to follow.
So that's what the surveyors need to follow. If someone were to engage the services of a surveyor and they want to actually verify the amount that they're being quoted for, how do they go about getting that done?
We have that in the Surveyor General's office. They can just advise the Surveyor General, or if they are not happy with the quotation, they can just come back to the Surveyor General and seek advice, because we have that information where we can verify.
So if we can go back to something that you said earlier, you said there are surveyors and they employ survey technicians, right? So could you explain to us a bit more about survey technicians, what specifically they do?
Actually, the survey technician are people that work under a registered surveyor. They actually can have a diploma in land survey, or someone who can have that experience, who have been working under a registered surveyor for the past 5 years, 10 years, who can just actually go out and do the actual survey that the registered surveyor can do. But unfortunately, he can't sign the survey plan. But that survey plan still need to be verified and thoroughly checked by land registered surveyors before he can sign off the survey plan. So actually, they are more assistance to registered surveyors.
Yes. Correct.
So looking at the active registered surveys, you happen to have a list. If I were to make inquiries, where can I actually find that list?
We have the list with the Surveyor Generals.
So that's with your
Yes.
with your office.
Yes.
Okay. And with all of these surveyors and technicians that we happen to have, of course, the one thing that we need to ensure is that they're upskilled on a regular basis. Do you have workshops, or you have technicians or surveyors from overseas that come in to do this?
Thank you. That's actually one of the Surveyor Generals and the department, Surveyor General's office, and the board's role, and the Fiji Institute of Survey. So we try to build a network within the surveying profession. So what actually we do, we have an annual congress, Fiji Institute of Surveyors Congress, where we invite speakers from overseas, such as New Zealand and Australia, because we have a network with Australian New Zealand Institute of Surveyors. We also have a seat at the International Federation of Surveyors, which is the international body, where we invite speakers from different areas like engineering surveys, cadastral survey, land management, or geodesy, which is the new aspect of survey now. So they come in and they present, or we organize workshop where they come in and present. This is how we build capacity within the surveying profession.
And you also have working relationships with universities. You spoke about FNU earlier, the other universities in Fiji.
Yes, actually we have a network with FNU and also USP. So what actually we just have now is a network with USP in terms of our skills, identify the gaps and the skills. So we try to form this network, the Young Surveyor Networks, which come under the umbrella of International Federation of Surveyors. That's where graduate or technicians within the age from 18 to 35 can join that forum. So we are organizing workshops and also a forum where where they all can come together and share ideas and also challenges which they are facing. So we have to find a ways how to address that. So one of our main mission or vision towards that network is for most of those members to become registered surveyor in future.
We'll be right back after another break. Welcome back. So let's talk about, Mr. Tamboa, some of the working challenges in the profession. So for someone who's probably aspiring to become a surveyor, registered surveyor, what should they know about the field?
Thank you. To become a surveyor is very challenging, but we love the work that we do. Why? Because you visit a lot of new places, you encounter a lot of new things, which helps you in a long way, and also it comes with the package or the salary. I know that most of these survey technicians, for example, in a private company, a survey technician who have 10 years of experience are earning 40,000 per year. That is what that companies offer to him. That is through experience. It's not only the type of work, although that we go through the rugged terrain, we have to be there on adverse weather condition, sunny and rainy. You have to work out in the field. You have to camp for a long period of time, but actually it's come with a good benefit. And also, once you become a registered surveyor, you'll deserve actually the sacrifice from the past years. You'll receive an awards once you become a registered surveyor.
You
So
mentioned that with the rugged terrain, especially in a tropical country like Fiji, where we have adverse weather conditions quite regularly, we have cyclones, and you have new waterways coming up, streams, rivers, desolation of certain areas with land and everything. If there were a surveyor that's carrying out work in a particular area, and if you were hit by adverse weather conditions, would that mean that they would have to go back and look at it and do the job all over again?
actually, we assess the area. If it is a flood-prone area, or if the area is a flood-prone area, then we will wait for suitable time to actually go out and do the survey. The point is, once we do the survey, once we establish the mark, we have a coordinates of that or information about that position. So once we come back, if anyone pulls that pegs out, if you go there or it disturbed because of construction or anything that disturbed that boundary, we can go back and reinstate that same boundary on that same position because we have collected information prior to that event.
Okay, that's interesting. So as we're coming towards the end of the show, let's talk about the board in general. Where is the board headed at the moment? Are you looking for more? Obviously, you're looking for more registered surveyors, but what are your goals in the future?
Actually, that is one of the main goals of the board now, to maintain professionalism and also assist all graduates to become a registered surveyor in the future. That is the two missions of the board. So we are working towards that. The good news is we just actually registered two new candidates who have become registered surveyor just last 2 weeks. And hopefully we will get more before the year ends. So our target actually, we need to register at least 2 in a year. For the next 10 years, if 2 is in a year, actually we can achieve our goal. But does not limit the number. So if we have 5 in a year, we are targeting 5 in a year, that is a bonus. So we are encouraging all candidate graduates from university to come on board, actually apply to the board and work under registered surveyor to become a registered surveyor. We are here to assist and also the department have emphasized or is trying to assist even the technician or graduate working under the department. So hopefully in the next 5 years we have a lot of young registered surveyor in the market.
Just as a final say to those who may not have started off on their career path, maybe who would be getting into university programs, any last words for them, what they'd actually need before they start off with their undergrad programs?
Yes, actually we encourage students to do physics and technical drawing. Those are the two main subjects because you'll be involved in a lot of drawing. It does not limit anyone from the school. If you're interested to do survey, if you come to Fijila, to FNU, there's a diploma program that is offered there. And we are here to assist. I've been assisting most of the candidates that are graduate from FNU looking for a place where they can be employed to gain that experience and also find a career path to become a registered surveyor. So right now we have 10 registered graduates in the Survey Registration Board. So now we are working with them to actually complete all the project.
Mr. Tumbo, it's been a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
And we wish you all the best in your endeavors.
Thank you very much.
That's all we have for you tonight. Thank you for joining us. Good evening.